I'm Douglas Mason, CEO of Naturally Splendid, symbol NSP on the TSX Venture Exchange. Naturally Splendid is a biotechnology and consumer products company focused on the global cannabis and health markets. Naturally Splendid is expanding distribution in this rapidly growing market with products currently in Canada, the USA, South Korea, Germany, and Australia. To view our comprehensive company presentation and for more information, please visit our website at naturallysplendid.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the Resource Works Society. Welcome back to the show, Stewart.
Thank you, Jim.
Stewart, the Greater Vancouver area once again paying the highest gasoline prices in North America, because we have extra taxes that other people don't pay, including an 18.5 cent a liter transit tax. So that puts us in a special category. Of course, there's no guarantee that money will be spent on transit. The government refuses to say that it will earmark money for certain things. Anyway, so with this high price of gasoline here and other parts of the country too paying extraordinarily high prices, what's behind it? Is there a shortage? It seems to me every spring there's at least one refinery fire or explosion. This year we've had several.
Yeah, and there's routine maintenance of refineries, factors like that. But I think the biggest factor is just there's a shortage of product that's able to get to us, and that constrains what's available. And just like Adam Smith figured out a long time ago, the law of supply and demand, when it's short in supply, the price goes up. That's nature. I think that we've had some people, including some politicians, saying, oh, there's gouging going on here. I've gone, like a lot of people have, looking for the evidence. You know, it's one of those things where all of a sudden everyone's a gasoline pricing expert, which is so much fun because you've got all these people doing research, sharing information, trying to get to the bottom of these questions. And it's despite the pain at the pump, it's kind of fun to see new information come out as more people get into it. But one of the things we haven't found is any evidence that there's gouging on price. You know, I recently looked, for example, it's been said that gas stations are in cahoots with each other to hose the consumer. If you look at the National Energy Board, they have a regular weekly tracking of gasoline prices across the country at retail, and they, in the most recent one, dated May 1st, they found that the markup by retailers, that is the gap between the wholesale price and what is on the sign when you buy it, was, in the case of Vancouver, it was 21st down the list of the size of that retail margin. And so there's 20 cities in Canada that have a higher margin that consumers have to pay. So cannot say that Vancouver is the worst off that way. It is above average, a couple of pennies above average per liter. That's true, but by no means the worst. So with that out of the way, you know, people are saying, well, how can we get more supplies to the system? And recently, we have a court filing actually from the province of BC, which funnily enough is doing two things. One, it's trying to stop Alberta from having the expanded Trans Mountain pipeline, and at the same time, it's trying to stop Alberta from supplying the fuel to BC that BC gets now. Now, it's kind of bizarre, this whole contradiction, and you know, you can see the politics of it fairly clearly, but the result of it for consumers is that we still have the situation where in BC, people consume about 80,000 barrels of gasoline a day, and a little bit less than that in diesel. We don't use as much of that. We get 55% of our gasoline and much more of that of our diesel imported from Alberta refiners, and most of that comes through the Trans Mountain pipeline. And then we also get the crude oil that is used in the Vancouver area to make gasoline and diesel and some jet fuel locally. So that's the Parkland refinery, and that's where our supply comes in. You know, they've got local supply, 55,000 barrels of crude, and they spit out their products from that. It's the biggest refinery in the province. There's only two of them. And, you know, this is what we're so dependent on. So the question is, how can we get more fuel down the pipeline, or how can we cause it that Parkland is able to refine more? Now, it turns out, a lot of people were surprised by this, but it came out in this week's court filing that the Parkland refinery is not running at full capacity. Now, you think it might be because we know there's so much demand, but it's not. And presumably, that's because they can't get enough feedstock, enough crude oil, to be able to do that. And why exactly that is, I think, is a little bit of a mystery. But a lot of that Trans Mountain pipeline, the product comes down, goes to the customers that buy it, who are in Puget Sound or in California. And so you've got the commercial existence of that pipeline is really its business purpose. It wasn't built to serve Vancouver, although Vancouver is served by it. Vancouver alone would not be the justification for that pipeline, and it's certainly not the justification for the expansion, the tripling of the capacity. Anyways, it's quite an interesting set of information. There's a lot of competing points of view. It's quite ideological. It's becoming quite political. And the great thing about it is everyone's got an opinion on it.
So, Stewart, really should we be ordering tankers full of crude from the U.S. or Alaska and bring them into Vancouver so the local Vancouver area refineries can produce more gasoline and bring the price down?
Well, that might sound like a logical thing to do in theory. It seems we don't have the infrastructure that we would be able to do that, number one. And secondly, whether we could easily find the supply of anyone who would want to be able to do that is another question. There's high demand. Right now, I noticed last night there was a super tanker of 2 million barrels came into Los Angeles all the way from Saudi Arabia. And we have ships crossing the world. The Venezuelans, despite their troubles, are sending a lot of crude oil, the same kind we produce in Canada, over to North Asia, China, Japan, and Singapore as well, and India. There's such a large trade internationally in these goods, and Vancouver is not a big market. I know in Vancouver we tend to think of ourselves as being the center of the world, and all things revolve.
Oh no, we're not Toronto. No, that's Stewart. That's Toronto's privilege to be center of the universe.
Okay,
Vancouver, I don't think has ever thought of themselves. So what we're saying then is that the pipeline that runs from Edmonton to Burnaby's at capacity, and so we're not getting enough oil in to help bring down Vancouver prices. So in other words, that second pipeline is needed. And is there any guarantee if the second pipeline is built that some of that product will be used to either bring gasoline from Edmonton refineries or at least product from Edmonton that can be refined locally for gasoline? Any guarantee that would happen and bring prices down?
This is really becoming a hot topic. Okay, so if you ask Trans Mountain, who really is building the equivalent of the road, they're not the ones who are putting the trucks and cars on the road. That's the job of someone else. So they're not really the ones to answer that. So they haven't got an answer, and nor would they. If you go to the shippers, or you look at the shippers, that is to say, the companies that want to ship oil through the pipeline and send it to their customers at the other end, they don't really like to talk about it either. So you can't really expect to get that kind of answer. Although if you look at one of them, there is one that's not an oil producer. It's actually a consumer. It's a refinery company from the United States that has a refinery at Anacortes, a pretty big one. I think about four times the size of the one in Burnaby. And why are they in this deal? Well, I haven't been able to ask them. I put a phone call into them. They haven't called me back. That was a long time ago. They're very hard to get a hold of, which is typical in these businesses. Yeah, you cannot find out. So if I could permit myself a little bit of conjecture, I would say they are probably signed on to support the Trans Mountain project because they want to get some oil through it to them, to their refinery in Anacortes. Now, they have other refineries, maybe other refineries in their company. I don't know. It's impossible to know for me anyways right now. And this question, will it result in more gasoline being available, refined product coming? Well, it's somewhat theoretical, and no one's willing to say yes or no. I noticed that the CBC was trying to research this, and and they seem to be trying to say that no, there won't be any more refined products. There's no basis for that statement. I think it's still in the realm of it's physically possible when they have the new pipeline. If they take out the heavy oil from the existing one, which right now is, a portion of it, not a giant portion, but if they take out that and that is shifted into the new heavy oil pipeline, the bigger one, the new one, which is all for export, and then that frees up not only some volume in the existing pipeline, but also allows it to move quickly, because the difference between, pushing molasses versus pushing water, imagine, right? So instead of all this heavy product in that pipeline, you've got a lighter mix. So that would allow you to then move more. So there is, if you talk to people who are involved in this industry, they don't want to commit, but I haven't found anyone to say, no, there's no way that could happen. If you look at the filing documents, there's nothing saying there's no way that could happen. There was a study that's been cited from 2015, which is an economic projection, which is based on inputs and outputs. It's a model that is being used as evidence that there couldn't be more refined products, but it in no way represents what the real world is for the shippers who are the ones who are, commercially driven. So, this is interesting though, because I think it might be an area, given the fact that this is now a federally owned asset subject to the whims and wiles of politicians, maybe a little bit of negotiation. And I think Vaughn Palmer from the Vancouver Sun may have suggested something along these lines in a column that maybe the feds could be involved in saying, look, Vancouver, you've got, your political problems over people who've been caused to feel uneasy about this pipeline expansion and shipping, even though it's very safe. Nothing shipped could be safer than this activity. We hear your concern. So we're going to also deal not only with that by making it safe as possible, we're also going to use some portion of this new expanded pipeline capacity to satisfy your local Metro Vancouver gasoline needs. I think there's a political thesis in there that if they're smart, there could be a positive conversation. And on this whole topic, there's a real shortage of positive conversations that tends to be so polarized and stalled.
Right, but is BC Premier John Horgan disingenuous when he said, it's Ottawa's fault that prices are high for gasoline, when if you just look at the pump itself, there's a breakdown of the taxes, and the highest amounts are charged by TransLink and the provincial government itself?
Yeah, on this issue, it seems to be a case of Victoria tests things out to see what the public would buy. I don't think anyone bought the gouging thesis, so they seem to have dropped that, which is good because there's no evidence of it. And now this idea that it's all Ottawa's fault. Okay, I think the idea there is that there's an election coming, that Trudeau is going to be worried about seats in the Lower Mainland, especially some seats in Burnaby and Vancouver that are maybe, or maybe not, maybe more sensitized to Trans Mountain issues. And so if he's thinking, I'm going to try to shift the pressure onto Trudeau away from Victoria as the creator of this problem, and see if that causes Trudeau to cough up some sort of concessions or something that would mitigate the issue. So I don't think that's in any way an irrational approach for Victoria. It could be good politics, and they're going to see, I think, what could come of it. And now whether Trudeau feels that this is something he could work on, the whole purpose of Trans Mountain Pipeline is to create a more stable economic base for Canada. Right now, one of the problems is, look what is happening with our agricultural exports to China. That sector is being destroyed for political reasons, diplomatic reasons, and that's a real problem. We have some of the lowest investment confidence in our country, partly because of the long stalled Trans Mountain process, but other things too that we've seen in a long time. We've got $100 billion in lost projects, again, because of political setting. You can't keep doing this as a country and expect to be economically successful. So, a lot of people are deeply concerned by this, and I think the more that Trans Mountain is a kind of plaything for settling, relatively lower priorities of ego and pecking order and highly regional issues, then I think the more that solving our national problems and setting our country on a really good, sustainable, long-term course will be difficult.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after the break.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, Recycling Trade Publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, the Supreme Court of Canada has refused to hear a challenge about the Trans Mountain Pipeline from the city of Burnaby. Can you tell us about the case?
Yeah, well, the city of Burnaby has, for a number of years, under not just one mayor, but two mayors now, two successive mayors, have tried to stop the advancement of the Trans Mountain Pipeline. They have pointed to concerns they say exist around issues that are very local in nature. It is something that the courts have not looked on favorably, and finally we've got the news this week that the Supreme Court has said, look, we're not interested in pursuing this. That's the highest court in the land. I think at Burnaby, it's going to be up to the city now to explain to taxpayers that the attempts they've made have come to a legal conclusion, and they've done the best to affect the outcome that they sought, and now it's time to move on. It could be, and it seems like the City Hall and some of the lawyers in there have got a very activist bent, and they love spending taxpayers' dollars not on filling potholes or building swings for children, but they love spending it on legal briefs and lawyers' hours, and I think the last time we saw a total, it was over $1 million. So they feel pretty rich for this particular windmill tilting, but it could be that they've now come to the end of it. And the mayor, I think, if his experience as a fire chief, so he's got a lot of experience in safety, public safety, dealing with the public, dealing with safety issues, I think he could put his experience and wisdom to good use by maybe pivoting now to a more constructive working relationship, because the determination of this pipeline to be moved forward is clearly evident. The federal government intends to get the work done and proceed. At some point, it would be good for the people of Burnaby to know that their mayor and council are actually engaged in a constructive way with an inevitable project.
Now, Stewart, I'm a subscriber to a website called marinetraffic.com that shows you all the ships out there around the planet, including local shipping right down to the tugboats. Now, of course, one of the challenges about expanding the pipeline and bringing one tanker a day in, when you see all the traffic out there, it's hard to believe that one extra dot among the thousands of vessels would make a difference to marine life beyond what's already out there.
Yeah, and especially when you consider the safety. There's about 75 tankers at sea right now around the world. And if you look at the safety record, say on the Pacific coast of Canada, it is, and this is for all ships, it's not just oil tankers, and there's very few oil tankers. It's a tiny portion of all ships. But they're 99.97% incident free from 14,000 or 13,500 assignments over, I think, the most recent year for which we got information. So I think anyone else who had that record would just say we've got a perfect record, because you round that up to perfect. And they don't make these catastrophic errors. They have the latest navigation. And I know there's someone thinking, as soon as he says that, we're going to have an accident. Well, the whole regime of safety for these is to prevent accidents. They have 3 tugboats towing a tanker through the working harbor of the Port of Vancouver, through Burrard Inlet. They have 2 pilots, not 1 pilot, but 2 professionals who know the waters like the back of their hand, who are up at the helm there. One has a job to look out, eyes on the water, the other eyes on instruments. They've got it covered. They've got all the weather information. They've got a control tower that is controlling traffic through that working port when it passes through. And that record is actually the safest in the country. It's marginally safer than the Atlantic pilotage, which is a mere 99.94% safe. Almost perfect too.
So, Stewart, why is the Trudeau government proposing a ban on tanker traffic in BC waters?
That's purely because they're trying to, I think, first of all, they've made a calculation on some lower mainland boats. You know, when Trudeau announced that, he announced it in Vancouver on the campaign trail in 2015. He didn't announce it in the Northwest, where supposedly it's focused. He announced it where voters are in the lower mainland. He didn't announce it in Ottawa or St. John. It's a real contradiction, because the federal government is spending $1.5 billion on what they call their Oceans Protection Plan. It's supposed to make all of the coast safe for shipping. It's a big part of why they say the Trans Mountain project will be safe, because they're investing in different vessels and equipment and spill response and bases and all the accoutrements that you want in order to have a spill response regime that's what they call world class. And the question, of course, is, well, if you can do that in the St. Lawrence River, you can do that off Newfoundland, off New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, you can do that off Vancouver Island, but you can't do that in Northwest? What's going on? What's different? Well, there's nothing different. Nothing different at all. And it's pure politics. And I think it comes back to the long-term investments of some of the environmental movements, in particular groups that are funded from the States. They like to see, they have this sort of romantic vision of the Northwest of British Columbia as their park. It's a special, image they have, and they spend a lot of money on cultivating environmental groups to do this activism over years and years. They're not really interested, they're not interested in jobs, economic development, the balance between the economy and the environment that everyone else is. The only thing that's acceptable to these mainly San Francisco-based entities is that we turn our Northwest into their park. Now, if you go to the Northwest, as I do often, that's not what people up there are interested in. Some are, but people up there want to have jobs. They like to have decent schools for their kids. The First Nations don't want to have 90% unemployment, which some of them have now. And so many of the First Nations up there are quite choked about this situation. There are some who oppose tankers. That's a fact for sure. But there's a lot who don't and want to have development. So, I think watching the Senate hearings, who've been looking at the bill to ban tankers, they've had a lot of different views. They had the new Premier of Alberta, Jason Kenney, was before them earlier in the week. And he laid out some pretty strong words on the potential harm, because it's not just about satisfying some California billionaires. This is about Canadians. Actually, it should be Canadians first. I don't think we even need to worry about those Californians at all, frankly. That's my personal opinion. We should be thinking about Canadians, and not just ones on the coast, not just ones who live in Kitsilano, but ones around the country, in Alberta, Saskatchewan, everywhere in the country. And that's what's been left out. So I think there's this feeling that if the federal government does something that's really as boneheaded as passed this law that prohibits something that is done safely, daily, around the world, in all kinds of conditions, if they do that, it will create, I think, a risk to the country.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the Pink's CYDVF, and on Frankfurt's C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, you wrote an op-ed piece for the Globe and Mail about Venezuela and heavy oil. Can you tell us about it?
Well, like you, Jim, I really have come to enjoy knowing what's going on the high seas, because on the West Coast we've been so interested in shipping safety. And I know lots of people are interested in this, because every time I talk about this in social media or anywhere, I get the most engagement of anything I do. So I'll tell you what, I was discovering recently that Venezuela, they've been shipping a lot of heavy oil, which is from the Venezuelan oil sands. It's not called the old bit, they have different names, but it's diluted by the addition of a substance into the oil sands, and it's exactly the same. It's actually got higher carbon intensity than the Canadian blends, which would lead some to say it's dirtier. And nevertheless, it's a heavy oil, and refineries in India, in northern China, need that kind of oil. It yields a lot of jet fuel. It yields a lot of gasoline. It's what those markets want. So it's sought after and prized. Now, Venezuela, I mean, look at what is going on in the news there. Obviously a very unstable country. It could be under new management any day now, which would be a good thing for it. But as it stands, basically they're shipping out $2 billion of this heavy oil to Asia, which is the same market that the Northern Gateway Pipeline and the Trans Mountain Pipeline were all about serving. But in a couple of weeks, it'll be 3 years since the Trans Mountain Pipeline was approved. Not since it was applied for, since it was approved, that work hasn't been done. And so while Canada is dithering, the Venezuelans, led by the Maduro government, whose main accomplishment in government is to reduce children to eat garbage, which they're doing now, they are profiting and staying in power. Corrupt regime, abusing its people, staying in power by selling oil to Asia markets that Canada, which is the most enlightened place in the world for producing oil, environmentally sound. We do an incredible job of regulations, distributing the benefits socially, ensuring that our climate obligations are real and recognized and implemented properly. All these things are happening in Canada, but we can't get our oil to market. The worst example of a country in the world in this area, with exactly the same product as us, is making out like a bandit. I mean, it's just wrong. So I wrote an article about this to lay out the facts that I've discovered. Right now there's about 8 super tankers. That's the biggest kind of oil tanker ship in the world. It's bigger than any tanker that will ever call it Vancouver, way, way bigger. These are 2 million barrels each. There's 8 of them. Right now they're headed into different ports. Singapore, which has got the biggest refinery in the world, India and China. Others going to other countries in smaller amounts. Those are the main ones. And, meanwhile, you look at the Canadian oil sands, and we've developed this technology. It's incredible stuff. It's always getting better. The reductions in emissions over time are phenomenal. I could throw stats at you, but do that another time. And yet we have the same protest movements that are leading to this tanker ban legislation that's being threatened are the ones, telling Canadians that your oil sands are no good or they're bad for the planet. Well, it's no worse or different than any other oil.
Stewart, do the latest polls show something like nearly 80%, something like 76 to 80% of Canadians are in favor of natural resource development?
Yeah, I think there's been a shift. I think people are realizing that we don't have unlimited options to say no to everything and only say yes to every 10th or 20th thing that comes along. The world doesn't work that way. I think for a long time, investors, international ones, were patient and willing to come to Canada and say, okay, we're going to go through your process. It's a little longer here, but we know you're doing quality work, asking good questions, so we'll work with you. That's changed. Canada's a joke now. No one's interested in Canada. We've had just a collapse in investment interest and intent. There's been a parade of executives, business executives, going to Senate in recent days and weeks to sit down, share their research. It's incredible what they've been saying to the senators on the Energy Committee and the Transportation Committee about the state of it. I think if every Canadian knew what I know, because I've been watching this process carefully, they would be alarmed. Right now, we've got in an oil-producing country like Canada, stopping a pipeline is not a gesture that has any positive attributes to it. It's actually counterproductive. It does nothing for the environment. It tells the world Canada's closed for business. It lets countries like Venezuela stay in power, keep those children starving. Is that what we want? When Jane Fonda comes to Vancouver, makes a film, and takes a break to go down to Jericho Beach to get on TV and say how terrible Canadians are with their horrible oil and tankers, she's doing no one any favors. She's not going to Venezuela, however, to do that, where it's actually maybe a true thing to say. Because she wouldn't do that, would she? She'd be in jail in a nanosecond. She does it in Canada because we're okay with that. Oh, she's exercising her free right of expression. I have no problem with that. But I think Canadians need to wake up to the fact that we're not, for all the accomplishments we've got, the positive ones, the environmental accomplishments, the climate accomplishments, the society we've built, we have been, through our characteristic self-effacing style, I think we've been hurting our own prospects.
Stewart, before we go, anything else you wanted to add to today's show?
Well, it's an interesting time, and if you go to the resourceworks.com website, I've taken a few of the highlights from that Senate process. I mentioned that there's executives. I want to share this information. It's actually all at the Senate website. You can find it, but you got to really search around, know where you're looking. To make it easy for people, if you go to resourceworks.com, I've put a few of the highlights there at the website, at the newsfeed, where you can see what some of the smartest business executives in the country with good data, they can prove their points. It's not just puffery and bump. It's real information about what's going on, and I think everyone should take a look if they have a chance.
Stewart, thank you so much for being on the show.
You're most welcome, Jim. Thank you.
My guest has been Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the Resource Works Society. His website, resourceworks.com. His Twitter handle, it's at SJMuir. If you have any questions for Stewart or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at HowStreet. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.